At Sunday dinner, my mother set down her wineglass, smiled that saccharine smile I'd come to dread, and announced, "Your father and I have made a decision. Next week, we're moving into your house. It's time you did something meaningful for this family." The room went silent except for the clinking of silverware. My father nodded like a king granting a decree. My younger sister smirked from across the table, already mentally redecorating my guest room. But here's what they didn't know, what none of them had bothered to ask. I leaned back in my chair, folded my hands, and said 5 words that shattered their perfect plan. "What house are you talking about?" The confusion on their faces was instant. Forks froze midair. My mother's smile faltered, and in that single moment, everything changed. My name is Vanessa Hartley. I'm 29 years old, and if you think this story ends with me backing down, you don't know me at all. What happens when a family that's treated you like their personal ATM suddenly realizes the bank is closed? Stay tuned.
Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you.
The dining room of my parents' house had always felt like a courtroom. High ceilings, dark wood paneling, and a table long enough to seat 12, but only ever occupied by 5. My mother sat at one end, my father at the other, and the rest of us scattered in between like pawns on a chessboard. Sunday dinners weren't optional in the Hartley family. They were command performances. I arrived exactly at 6, carrying a store-bought pie because I'd learned years ago that homemade efforts went unnoticed. My sister, Brittany, was already there, draped across the love seat in the living room, scrolling through her phone with manicured nails that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill. She didn't look up when I walked in. "Oh, good, you're here," my mother called from the kitchen, her voice dripping with false cheerfulness. "Set the table, would you? Your father's starving." I bit back the automatic response forming in my throat and grabbed the plates. This was the routine. I show up, I serve, I clean up, I leave. Rinse and repeat for 29 years. Dinner started normally enough. Pot roast, mashed potatoes, green beans that had been boiled into submission. My father carved the meat with surgical precision, while my mother poured wine for everyone except me. She'd stopped offering years ago, claiming I didn't appreciate good vintages. Brittany picked at her food, complaining about how the new gym downtown didn't have the right equipment. My younger brother, Tyler, who was 25 but acted 15, talked endlessly about his latest failed business venture, something involving cryptocurrency and energy drinks that made absolutely no sense. I ate quietly, waiting for the inevitable moment when the conversation would turn to me. It always did. But tonight felt different. There was an electric tension in the air, a shared secret bouncing between my parents' glances. My mother cleared her throat halfway through the meal, setting down her fork with deliberate precision. "Vanessa, your father and I need to discuss something important with you." Here it comes, I thought. Another lecture about my life choices, another comparison to Brittany's modeling career or Tyler's entrepreneurial spirit. Never mind that Brittany's career consisted of Instagram sponsorships for teeth whitening strips, and Tyler had burned through 3 trust fund installments before his 23rd birthday. "We've been thinking," my father began, dabbing his mouth with a linen napkin. "Your mother and I are getting older. This house is too much to maintain." I nodded slowly, waiting for the punchline. "So we've decided," my mother continued, her smile widening, "that next week we're moving in with you." The words hung in the air like smoke after a gunshot. I blinked, certain I'd misheard. "Excuse me?" "Into your house," my father clarified, as if speaking to a child. "You have all that space, and frankly, it's time you contributed something substantial to this family. We raised you, clothed you, educated you. The least you can do is provide us with a comfortable place to retire." Brittany snorted into her wineglass, finally putting that big empty house to good use. Tyler grinned. Yeah, maybe now you'll have some actual purpose. My chest tightened. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. They weren't asking. They weren't even discussing. They were informing me, as if my home, my sanctuary, the one thing I'd built entirely on my own, was community property waiting to be claimed. "We've already started packing," my mother added, sipping her wine. "The movers are scheduled for Friday. We'll take the master bedroom, of course. It has the best light. Your father needs proper light for his painting hobby." My father nodded sagely, as if this were the most reasonable arrangement in the world. "You can stay in one of the smaller rooms or the basement. You've always been good at making do." Something inside me snapped. Not dramatically, not yet, but a small, pulled crack formed in the armor I'd been wearing my entire life. The armor that kept me silent, compliant, desperately seeking approval from people who'd never once looked at me as anything more than a resource to be exploited. I set down my fork carefully, the metallic clink echoing louder than it should have. All eyes turned to me. "What house?" I asked, my voice steady. My mother's smile flickered. "Your house, dear. Don't be difficult." "No, I mean it." I leaned forward, locking eyes with her. "What house are you talking about? The one on Maple Street with the wraparound porch?" "Obviously," my father huffed, impatience creeping into his tone. "The 4-bedroom colonial you bought 3 years ago. Stop playing games." I let the silence stretch, watching confusion ripple across their faces. Brittany's smirk faded. Tyler stopped chewing. My mother's fingers tightened around her wine stem. "That's interesting," I said slowly, "because I don't own that house anymore." The reaction was immediate. My mother's face went pale. My father's fork clattered to his plate. Brittany sat up straight, her phone forgotten. "What do you mean you don't own it?" my father demanded. "I mean exactly that. I sold it 2 months ago. Closed escrow last week." The dining room exploded into chaos. My mother's voice pitched into a shriek. "You sold it without telling us?" "Why would I tell you? It was my house." "Your house?" my father roared, his face turning an alarming shade of crimson. "We helped you with that down payment. You loaned me $5,000 7 years ago, which I paid back with interest within 18 months. Every mortgage payment, every repair, every property tax bill, that was me, not you." Brittany leaned across the table, her perfectly made-up face twisted in disbelief. "Where are Mom and Dad supposed to go now?" I met her gaze without flinching. That sounds like a question they should have asked before announcing they were moving into a house that wasn't theirs to claim. My mother's hands trembled as she reached for her wine, draining the glass in one desperate gulp. "This is unacceptable! You will call those buyers and cancel the sale." "The sale is final. They move in this Wednesday." "Then where did you move?" Tyler asked, suspicion creeping into his voice. "You have to live somewhere." I smiled then, a small, secret smile that made all of them lean forward unconsciously. "I do live somewhere, just not anywhere you'll be visiting." And with that, I stood, grabbed my coat from the back of the chair, and walked toward the door. Behind me, voices erupted, angry, desperate, demanding. But for the first time in 29 years, I didn't stop to listen, I didn't apologize, I didn't explain. I simply left. The cool evening air hit my face as I stepped onto the porch, and I inhaled deeply, feeling lighter than I had in years. Behind me, through the closed door, I could hear my mother's wailing, my father's furious shouting, the scrape of chairs as they scrambled to make sense of what had just happened. They'd spent my entire life telling me I was the forgettable one, the useless one, the one who existed only to serve their needs. Tonight, I'd finally shown them the truth. I was the one they should have paid attention to all along. And the real story? It was only just beginning.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story.
My phone started ringing before I even reached my car. I glanced at the screen, Mom, and silenced it. By the time I pulled out of the driveway, 3 more calls had come through. Dad, Brittany, Tyler. I ignored them all. The drive to my actual home took 40 minutes, winding through back roads they'd never bothered to learn. Not the Maple Street colonial they'd assumed was still mine, but a converted loft apartment in the Arts District downtown, a neighborhood my mother had once called where careers go to die. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd bought the loft 6 months ago with the profit from selling the colonial. Exposed brick, floor-to-ceiling windows, a rooftop terrace with a view of the city skyline. It was half the square footage, but twice the personality. More importantly, it was mine in a way that house never had been. They didn't know the address, they didn't know it existed, and I intended to keep it that way. As I unlocked the door, my phone buzzed again. This time a text from Brittany. "Mom is literally crying. What is wrong with you?" I typed back, "Ask her what's wrong with announcing she's moving into someone else's house without asking." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. No response came. I poured myself a glass of wine, a nice vintage, the kind my mother insisted I couldn't appreciate, and settled onto my couch. The city lights twinkled outside my windows, and for the first time all week, I felt the knot in my shoulders begin to loosen. But the peace didn't last long. At 9 p.m., my phone rang again. This time it was an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Vanessa Hartley. My father's voice boomed through the speaker, formal and frigid. He only used my full name when he was furious. "You will explain yourself. Now." "There's nothing to explain, Dad. I sold my house. End of story." "Don't you dare take that tone with me. Your mother is devastated. We had everything planned. We've already given notice to our landlord." I sat up straighter. "Wait, your landlord? I thought you owned that house." Silence. Heavy, damning silence. "Dad, the house you've lived in for 30 years, you're renting it?" "That's none of your concern," he snapped, but his voice had lost its authority. "The point is, we need somewhere to go, and you've sabotaged our plans." The pieces clicked into place with stunning clarity. The expensive dinners, the luxury vacations, Brittany's endless shopping sprees funded by family money, Tyler's failed business ventures that somehow never seemed to drain the supposed family fortune. They'd been living beyond their means for years, keeping up appearances while bleeding money they didn't have. "Let me get this straight," I said slowly. "You've been renting that house, probably at a ridiculous rate, maintaining this fiction of wealth and success, and now that you can't afford it anymore, you thought you'd just move into my house and let me foot the bill? We're your parents," he roared. "You owe us." "I owe you exactly what you gave me: criticism, neglect, and the constant reminder that I'd never measure up to your expectations. Consider that debt paid in full." "Vanessa." I hung up. My hands were shaking, not from fear, from rage, from the sheer audacity of it all. They'd spent decades making me feel small, worthless, expendable, and all along, they were the ones drowning, desperately grasping for a life raft they thought I'd be too weak to deny them. The texts started flooding in after that. My mother's messages came in rapid succession, each one more manipulative than the last. "How can you do this to your own mother? I gave you life, and this is how you repay me? Your father's health is deteriorating. This stress could kill him. Fine, be selfish, but don't come crying to us when you end up old and alone." I screenshotted every single one and saved them in a folder labeled Evidence. Brittany's messages were different, entitled and accusatory. "You've always been jealous of me. This is just revenge because I'm successful and you're not. Mom and Dad supported you through college and you can't even give them a place to live. Everyone's gonna know what kind of person you really are." I replied to that one, "Good, let them know. Maybe they'll finally understand why I've kept my distance." Tyler, predictably, tried a different approach. Guilt, mixed with false camaraderie. Hey sis, look, I know you're upset, but this is family, right? We stick together. Mom's really hurt. Can't you just talk to her? What if we worked out some kind of arrangement, like they pay rent or something? I almost laughed at that last one. They couldn't afford rent anywhere decent, which was exactly why they'd planned to move in with me rent-free. By midnight, the calls had stopped. The texts slowed to a trickle. I assumed they'd finally accepted reality and were regrouping. I was wrong. The next morning, I woke to 17 missed calls and a voicemail from my mother that made my blood run cold. Vanessa, this is your last chance. Her voice was steel wrapped in silk. You will give us the address of wherever you're living now, or we will find it ourselves. Your father has already called his lawyer friend. You're not getting away with this. Family takes care of family, and we will make sure you do the right thing, one way or another. I saved that voicemail too. Then I did something I should have done years ago. I called my own lawyer, a woman named Patricia Chen I'd worked with on the house sale. She'd handled everything with ruthless efficiency, and more importantly, she didn't suffer fools. Vanessa, she answered on the second ring. How can I help you? I explained the situation. The dinner, the assumption, the threats now pouring through my phone. She listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Do you want my legal advice or my personal opinion? She asked. Both. Legally, they have no claim to your property, past or present. You're an adult. The house was solely in your name. The sale was legitimate. Their threats are empty bluster. Ignore them. And personally? Patricia's voice hardened. Document everything. Every call, every text, every threat. People like this escalate. They're not going to accept no for an answer because they've never had to before. You've been their safety net, their scapegoat, their convenient solution. Now that you've removed yourself from that role, they're going to panic. And panicked people do stupid things. What kind of stupid things? Showing up at your workplace, turning other family members against you, smear campaigns. In extreme cases, filing frivolous lawsuits or police reports. I've seen it all. My stomach twisted. So, what do? You stand your ground. You don't engage. You don't explain. You don't justify. You simply maintain your boundary and let them exhaust themselves against it. Eventually, they'll either accept reality or expose themselves for who they really are. I thanked her and hung up, her words echoing in my mind. Stand your ground, don't engage, maintain your boundary. That afternoon, I blocked my parents' numbers, then Brittany's, then Tyler's. I set my social media to private and removed any location tags from old posts. I informed my workplace, a marketing firm downtown, that my family might try to contact me there and to please not forward any calls or visits. My boss, a sharp woman named Andrea, who'd escaped her own toxic family years ago, simply nodded. Say no more. We've got your back. For 3 days, silence reigned. I began to think maybe they'd actually given up, that maybe Patricia's prediction had been overly cautious. Then Friday arrived, the day the new owners were moving into my old house on Maple Street, and that's when my family decided to make their move. At 2 p.m., my phone, now unblocked temporarily to receive a work call, lit up with a message from an unknown number. I opened it without thinking. It was a photo. My parents, Brittany and Tyler, standing on the front porch of the Maple Street house. My mother was holding a sign that read, "Our daughter sold our family home out from under us. We're homeless because of her cruelty." The caption beneath read, "Since you won't answer, we'll let the neighborhood know what kind of daughter you are." My hands went numb. They were really doing this. They were actually trying to publicly shame me into submission. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't have known, was that I'd already spoken to the new owners, a young couple named David and Rachel Monroe, who'd bought the house as their first home. I'd warned them that my family might cause trouble, and I'd given them Patricia's number just in case. I forwarded the photo to Patricia with a single message. It started. Her response came within minutes. Let them dig their own grave. Don't respond, don't react. I'll handle it. So I didn't respond. I simply watched as my family's desperation played out in real time, completely unaware that every action they took was only proving my point. They thought they were cornering me. Instead, they were exposing themselves, and the whole neighborhood was watching. The photo went viral in the neighborhood Facebook group within hours, not in the way my family had hoped. I didn't see it firsthand. I'd left that group years ago after my mother kept tagging me in embarrassing childhood photos. But my former neighbor, Mrs. Kowalski, texted me screenshots with a simple message. "Your family is making quite a scene. Thought you should know people aren't buying it." The comments under my mother's post were brutal. "Wait, didn't the Hartleys rent that house? How is it a family home? I've lived next door for 5 years. That daughter was the only one who ever did yard work or maintenance. Where were they? This seems like emotional manipulation. An adult sold her own property and suddenly she's the villain? If my parents announced they were moving into my house without asking, I'd have done the same thing." Someone had even posted a photo from 3 months ago showing me painting the shutters alone while my family sat in lawn chairs drinking lemonade. The caption read, "Doesn't look like a family home to me. Looks like one person's house and 4 people's vacation spot." Mrs. Kowalski followed up with another text. "The new owners called the police. Your parents refused to leave the porch. It's a whole thing." My stomach dropped. I immediately called Patricia. "Already on it," she answered before I could speak. "The Monroes contacted me an hour ago. Your family showed up claiming they had a right to enter the property. When the Monroes refused, your mother started crying on the lawn and your father threatened to sue them for emotional distress." Can he do that? He can try. It'll get thrown out faster than he can say frivolous lawsuit, but yes, he can file. The police issued a trespassing warning. If they return, they'll be arrested. I exhaled slowly. What do I do? Absolutely nothing. You're not involved in this situation. They made it about the Monroes the moment they stepped foot on that property. Let them handle it. Your job is to stay invisible. Staying invisible proved harder than expected. By Saturday morning, my extended family had gotten involved. Aunts and uncles I hadn't spoken to in years were suddenly texting, calling, leaving voicemails that ranged from concerned to accusatory. My Aunt Linda, "Vanessa, honey, my mother called sobbing. What's going on? Can't you work something out?" My Uncle George, "Family doesn't abandon family. I don't know what's gotten into you, but you need to fix this." My cousin Jennifer, "Wow, just wow. I always thought you were the nice one." But then there were other messages, ones that surprised me. My Aunt Carol, my mother's younger sister, who'd always been the black sheep, "About damn time you stood up to them. Your mother's been pulling this martyr act for 40 years. Don't cave." My cousin Marcus, from my father's side, "Dude, I've been watching this unfold. Your parents tried the same thing with my brother 5 years ago. He's still in therapy. Stand firm." Even my grandmother, my father's mother, who I assumed would side with him, sent a brief text. "Your grandfather and I built our own life. So should they. Proud of you." The family was fracturing along lines I'd never known existed. People who'd stayed silent for years were suddenly choosing sides, and not everyone was choosing my parents. Sunday afternoon brought a new development. Brittany posted on Instagram, her platform of choice for manufactured drama. The photo showed her looking devastated in black and white, tears artfully streaming down her face. The caption was a masterpiece of manipulation. "When your sister chooses money over family, my parents have nowhere to go because of her selfishness. But I guess some people never learn what unconditional love means. Hashtag family first, heartbroken, praying for healing." Within minutes, her followers flooded the comments with support. Heart emojis, praying hands, "You deserve better," the usual performative sympathy that Instagram influencers attracted like moths to flame. But then, something unexpected happened. Someone commented, "Didn't your sister buy that house herself? Why would she owe it to her parents?" Brittany deleted the comment. 3 more appeared, asking the same question. She deleted those too. Then someone posted a link to the neighborhood Facebook thread where the real story was unfolding. Brittany's carefully curated narrative began to crumble. Her followers, the ones who actually read past headlines, started questioning. The comment section turned into a debate about family boundaries, toxic dynamics, and financial entitlement. Within 2 hours, Brittany had limited comments to "people I follow" and posted a stories update. To everyone sending negativity, "You don't know the full story, but I'm not going to defend my family to strangers. Real ones know the truth."
I screenshotted it all. Patricia had been right. They were digging their own grave one social media post at a time.
Monday morning, I walked into work expecting normalcy. Instead, my coworker Jamila met me at the elevator with wide eyes. Girl, your dad was here. My blood went cold. What? Like 30 minutes ago. He told reception he needed to speak with you urgently about a family emergency. Andrea intercepted him, told him you were out of the office, and that all communications needed to go through official channels. He got loud. Security escorted him out. I found Andrea in her office. She looked up from her computer, her expression a mixture of sympathy and steel. "Your father is not welcome in this building," she said flatly. "I've already notified security. If he returns, they'll call the police. I also informed HR. This is now documented." "Andrea, I'm so sorry." She held up a hand. "Don't. I meant what I said. We protect our people here. Your personal life is bleeding into your professional space because your family won't respect boundaries. That's not your fault. But we're not going to let them harass you at work." Relief washed over me so strongly I had to sit down. "Thank you. Now, get to your desk and focus on the campaign pitch. Let security handle your family." I did exactly that, but focusing proved difficult when 2 hours later, I received an email from my father's lawyer friend, a man named Ron Pemberton, who, according to a quick Google search, specialized in real estate disputes and had a 2-star rating on every review site. The email was laughably official sounding. "Dear Miss Hartley, I represent Mr. and Mrs. Gerald Hartley in the matter of the wrongful sale of property located at 847 Maple Street. It has come to my attention that you sold said property without family consultation, causing significant emotional and financial distress to my clients. We demand immediate compensation in the amount of $150,000 or the provision of alternative, suitable housing. Failure to comply within 48 hours will result in legal action. Sincerely, Ronald Pemberton, Esquire." I forwarded it to Patricia with the subject line, "Is this a joke?" She called me within 5 minutes, laughing. "This man got his degree from a correspondence school in the 90s. He's bluffing. Don't respond. Let me handle it." "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to send him a very polite letter explaining that his demand has no legal basis, that his clients have no ownership claim to property they never owned, and that any further harassment will result in a restraining order and a countersuit for intimidation." Will that work? It'll shut him up. Men like Pemberton prey on people who don't know better. Once they realize you have actual legal representation, they fold like cheap suits. That evening, Patricia sent her response. It was 3 pages of legal terminology that essentially said, "Try it and see what happens." Ron Pemberton never replied. But my parents weren't done. They'd lost the legal angle, the public sympathy angle, and the workplace harassment angle. So they tried something I should have seen coming, but somehow didn't. They went after my reputation at the one place I'd always felt safe, my community art class. Every Thursday night, I took a pottery class at a local studio, a small escape where I could create something with my hands and leave the stress of the world behind. I'd been going for 2 years. The instructor, a kind woman named Beth, knew me as the quiet student who always cleaned up her station and helped newcomers with the pottery wheel. That Tuesday, Beth called me. "Vanessa, I need to ask you something, and please know I'm not accusing you of anything, but a woman claiming to be your mother came by today. She said you've stolen money from your family and that we should be careful trusting you around valuable equipment." My vision blurred with rage. "Beth, Beth interrupted gently. "I told her to leave. I've known you for 2 years. You're one of the most reliable people in this class. Whatever's happening with your family, it's clear they're trying to damage your reputation because they're not getting what they want." Tears burned behind my eyes. "Thank you." "You're welcome. And Vanessa, you don't owe anyone an explanation, but if you need a witness to their behavior, I've got you." After I hung up, I sat in my loft staring at the city lights and realized something profound. My family had spent so much time controlling the narrative that they'd never considered what would happen if the narrative escaped their control.
They'd expected me to crumble, to apologize, to hand over keys and dignity just to make the discomfort stop. Instead, I'd built a fortress they couldn't breach. And now everyone was watching them throw themselves against the walls over and over, growing more desperate with each failed attempt. The question wasn't if they'd eventually destroy themselves, it was how much damage they'd do before they finally stopped.
3 weeks after the dinner that changed everything, my parents' world began to collapse in ways even I hadn't anticipated. It started with a phone call from Aunt Carol. She sounded breathless, almost excited, in a way that made me nervous. "Vanessa, you need to hear this. I just had coffee with your mother." I braced myself. Why would you do that? Because I wanted to see how deep the delusion went. And honey, it's deeper than the Mariana Trench. She paused. Your parents have been evicted. The word hung in the air between us. Evicted? 3 months behind on rent. The landlord filed paperwork 2 weeks ago. They have until the end of the month to vacate. That's why they were so desperate to move in with you. They weren't just downsizing. They were about to be homeless. My mind raced. Did Mom tell you this? Not directly. She kept trying to paint herself as the victim, saying the landlord was cruel and unreasonable. So I asked how much the rent was. Carol laughed, sharp and bitter. $3,800 a month, Vanessa. For a rental! They've been paying almost $4,000 a month to keep up appearances while claiming they couldn't afford to help Tyler pay off his credit cards or contribute to Brittany's car payment. The numbers didn't make sense. What do they live on? Dad retired 5 years ago and Mom never worked. Exactly! That's when I started digging. Carol's voice dropped lower. I called your Uncle George. You know, he handles investments for half the family. He told me your parents cashed out their retirement accounts 3 years ago. Everything. Gone. My stomach turned. On what? On Tyler's business ventures, Brittany's modeling career, that European vacation they took last year, the new car your dad bought. They've been burning through money like it grows on trees, assuming they'd always have somewhere to land when the money ran out, and that somewhere was supposed to be you. I sat down heavily on my couch. All those years of them calling me the irresponsible one, the one who'd never amount to anything, while they were systematically destroying their own financial future. There's more, Carol continued. Your mother told me, and I quote, Vanessa has always been selfish even as a child. We gave her everything, and this is how she repays us? I asked her what she meant by everything. She couldn't name a single thing beyond basic parenting obligations. Carol, I paid my own way through college. I bought my own car. I know. That's why I finally told her the truth. I said, Margaret, I've watched you treat that girl like a servant for 30 years. The only thing you ever gave her was criticism and the message that she wasn't good enough. Now you're shocked she won't let you move in and continue the pattern? What did she say? Carol's laugh was cold. She threw her latte at me in the middle of Starbucks, then stormed out screaming that I was just like you, ungrateful and heartless. The barista gave me a free drink and apologized for my difficult family member. I've never been more proud to be called difficult. After we hung up, I sat in the growing darkness of my loft, processing everything. They weren't just entitled, they were financially ruined. And they'd planned to make me their lifeline without ever asking if I was willing to drown with them. The next blow came from an unexpected source. Tyler. He showed up at my building on a Wednesday evening. The doorman called up and I almost told him to send Tyler away. But curiosity won. I agreed to meet him in the lobby, neutral ground, witnesses present. Tyler looked terrible. His usual cocky swagger was gone, replaced by hunched shoulders and dark circles under his eyes. He wouldn't meet my gaze. I need to talk to you, he mumbled. You have 5 minutes. He sank into one of the lobby chairs, and I remained standing. Let him look up at me for once. Mom and Dad are losing it. Like,
actually losing it. Dad punched a hole in the wall yesterday. Mom hasn't stopped crying for 3 days. Brittany moved out, went to stay with her boyfriend because she can't handle the energy. And you're telling me this because they're talking about suing you, like actually taking you to court. Dad's convinced you manipulated them somehow, that you tricked them into thinking the house was theirs so you could pull the rug out from under them. I almost laughed. That's the narrative he's going with? That I somehow masterminded this? Tyler finally looked up and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Guilt. I know it's insane. I told him it wouldn't work, but he won't listen. He's contacted 3 different lawyers. They all told him the same thing. He has no case. But he's obsessed. He thinks if he just finds the right lawyer, he can force you to give them money. Why are you really here, Tyler? He swallowed hard. Because I'm next. They're out of money, out of options, and now they're turning on me. Asking why I can't support them, saying I owe them for all the money they invested in my businesses that failed because I had no idea what I was doing. But they kept throwing money at me anyway because I'm the golden boy who can do no wrong. Except I did everything wrong and now they hate me for it.
For a moment, just a moment, I felt sorry for him. Then I remembered every snide comment, every time he'd sided with them against me, every casual cruelty he'd delivered with a smile. What do you want from me, Tyler? I don't know. Maybe just to say I get it now. Why you left? Why you cut them off? I always thought you were being dramatic, but you weren't. They really do only see people as resources. And once you stop being useful, he trailed off. Once you stop being useful, they discard you. I finished. Welcome to the club. I'm sorry, he whispered, for everything, for all of it. I studied him for a long moment. The apology felt genuine, born from his own suffering rather than manipulation. But it didn't erase decades of complicity. I accept your apology, I said carefully. But that doesn't mean I'm going to save you from the situation you helped create. You enabled them. You benefited from their treatment of me. Now you're experiencing what I lived my entire life. Tyler nodded slowly. I know. I wanted you to know that you were right. About all of it. He left without asking for anything else. No requests for money, no pleas to intervene with our parents. Just an acknowledgement that the emperor had no clothes and he was finally seeing the truth. That weekend, the situation reached a breaking point. Brittany called me from a blocked number. I only answered because I thought it might be work-related. They're planning something, she said without preamble. Mom and Dad, they're going to show up at your building. They have the address. My blood ran cold. How? Tyler told them before he had his little crisis of conscience. They're coming tomorrow morning. Dad said something about making a scene until she has no choice but to talk to us. I think he's serious. Why are you telling me this? Brittany was quiet for a moment. Because I just signed a lease for my own apartment, used the last of my savings. And you know what Mom said when I told her? She said I was abandoning the family just like you did, that I was choosing money over blood. Her voice hardened. I finally understand what you meant about being useful. The second I couldn't help them anymore, I became the enemy too. So you're warning me. Consider it an olive branch. Or maybe just me realizing that you were never the problem. We all were. For letting them treat you that way and telling ourselves it was normal. After she hung up, I immediately called Patricia, then building security. Then I did something I'd been avoiding. I called the police non-emergency line and filed a report documenting everything. The threats, the workplace harassment, the trespassing at the Monroe's house, the stalking behavior. The officer I spoke with was sympathetic. Ma'am, I'm going to be honest with you. This sounds like a family that's escalating. You should consider a restraining order. Will that actually stop them? It'll give us legal grounds to arrest them if they violate it. Sometimes that's enough to snap people back to reality. Sometimes it's not. But at least you'll have protection on paper. That night, I didn't sleep.
I lay in my bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering how it had come to this, how the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally had become strangers I needed legal protection from. But beneath the anxiety was something else, a strange, calm certainty. I'd done nothing wrong. I'd simply stopped letting them use me. And if that made me the villain in their story, then so be it. Because in my story, the one I was finally writing for myself, I was the hero who escaped, and I wasn't going back.
They arrived at 8:30 on a Sunday morning, exactly when Brittany had warned they would. I watched from my fourth-floor window as my parents' car pulled up to the building entrance. My father got out first, his face set in that familiar expression of righteous anger. My mother followed, clutching her purse like a weapon. They looked smaller somehow, diminished by their desperation. I'd prepared for this moment. Security had their photos, the police report was filed, Patricia was on speed dial. I'd even positioned my phone on a tripod by the window, recording everything. They didn't make it past the lobby. Marcus, the head of security, a former Marine with zero tolerance for drama, met them at the door. I couldn't hear the conversation from my window, but I could see the body language. My father gesturing wildly, my mother trying to push past Marcus, him standing firm, hand raised, shaking his head. The argument lasted 6 minutes. I know because I timed it. Then my father made his fatal mistake. He shoved Marcus. It wasn't a hard shove, more of a frustrated push, but it was enough. Marcus stepped back, pulled out his radio, and within 90 seconds, 2 police officers arrived. They must have been nearby, possibly already alerted by security that there might be trouble. My phone rang. Marcus. Ms. Hartley, your parents are being removed from the premises. The police are issuing a formal trespass warning. If they return, they'll be arrested. Do you want to press charges for the assault on me? I hesitated. This was the moment. I could let them go, let them slink away with just a warning, or I could draw a line so clear, so permanent, that they'd never cross it again. Yes, I said. Press charges. Understood. The officers would like a statement from you if you're willing to come down. I'll be there in 5 minutes. I grabbed my jacket, the folder of documentation I'd been keeping, and headed downstairs. My hands were shaking, but my resolve was steel. The lobby had cleared of other residents, probably for the best. My parents stood on opposite sides of the room, flanked by officers. My mother's eyes were red and puffy. My father's face had gone from angry to pale, the reality of the situation finally sinking in. When I walked in, my mother lunged toward me. Vanessa, please, tell them this is a misunderstanding. Ma'am, step back, one of the officers commanded, positioning himself between us. I looked at my mother, really looked at her, and felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, not even pity. Just the blank neutrality of looking at a stranger. There's no misunderstanding, I said calmly. These people showed up at my building uninvited after weeks of harassment. When security asked them to leave, my father became physical. I want that on record. Vanessa Marie Hartley, my father's voice boomed across the lobby. How dare you, after everything we've done for you? The officer turned to him. Sir, you need to remain calm, or we'll have to restrain you. I handed my folder to the other officer, a woman with kind eyes and a non-nonsense demeanor. This is documentation of the harassment. Text messages, voicemails, emails from their lawyer, witness statements from my workplace, my pottery instructor, and my neighbors at my previous address. There's also a report about them trespassing at my old house and harassing the new owners. She flipped through the pages, her expression growing more serious with each one. This is extensive. It's been escalating for 3 weeks. My father's voice cracked. We're your parents. We needed help, and you turned your back on us. I finally met his eyes. You needed a bailout. There's a difference. You spent decades telling me I wasn't good enough, that I was the family disappointment. You used me for free labor and emotional support while giving me nothing but criticism in return. Then, when your own poor decisions caught up to you, you expected me to sacrifice my peace and my home to fix problems I didn't create? We raised you, my mother shrieked. We fed you, clothed you, put a roof over your head. That's called basic parenting, Mom. That's the legal minimum you're required to do when you have a child. You don't get lifetime rewards for meeting the bare minimum.
The female officer's mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but close. She'd clearly dealt with families like this before.
My father tried one more time, his voice dropping to that manipulative tone he used when anger didn't work. Please, sweetheart, we're desperate. We have nowhere to go. Your mother's health is not my responsibility, I interrupted. You're both adults who made adult choices. You cashed out your retirement, you lived beyond your means, you enabled Tyler's failures and Brittany's fantasy lifestyle. Those were your decisions. You don't get to make them my emergency. The officer closed my folder. Mr. and Mrs. Hartley, you're being issued a formal no trespass order for this property. You are not to come within 500 feet of this building or contact Miss Hartley in any way. Violation will result in immediate arrest. She turned to my father. As for the assault on security, you'll be receiving a citation. If you're smart, you'll pay it and consider yourself lucky we're not taking you in today. My mother collapsed into a chair, sobbing. My father stood frozen, his face a mask of disbelief. They'd truly believed that showing up here, making a scene, would force me back into submission. They'd never considered that I'd actually follow through. Vanessa, my mother gasped between sobs, what are we supposed to do? I should have walked away. I should have just gone back upstairs and let the officers finish. But I needed to say one more thing, not for them, but for me. What you should do, I said quietly, is look in the mirror and ask yourselves why every single one of your children has pulled away from you. Tyler apologized to me last week. Brittany warned me you were coming. Even Aunt Carol told you the truth about how you treat people. You're not the victims here. You're the common denominator. We loved you, my father started. No, you loved what I could do for you. There's a difference. I turned to the officers. I'll file for a restraining order tomorrow. Is there anything else you need from me right now? The female officer shook her head. We have your contact information. We'll be in touch if we need anything else. You're free to go. I nodded to Marcus, who'd been watching the whole exchange with professional detachment. Thank you for handling this. Just doing my job, Miss Hartley. But for what it's worth, you handled yourself with more grace than they deserved. As I walked toward the elevator, my mother called out one last time. You'll regret this. When you're old and alone, you'll regret turning your back on family. I pressed the elevator button and turned back to face her. I'd rather be alone than surrounded by people who make me feel empty. The elevator doors closed on her shocked face. Back in my loft, I collapsed on the couch, adrenaline draining from my body in waves. My phone buzzed, a text from Patricia. Heard from your building security. Want me to file for the restraining order tomorrow? I typed back, yes, and thank you. You did the right thing. Now comes the hard part. Healing. I stared at that message for a long time. Healing. I'd spent so many years just surviving, I'd forgotten what it felt like to actually live, to make choices based on what I wanted rather than what they demanded, to exist without the constant weight of their disappointment pressing down on me. Outside my windows, the city hummed with life, people going about their Sundays, unaware of the small revolution that had just taken place in this building lobby. A daughter finally standing up to the parents who had spent a lifetime cutting her down. My phone buzzed again. Aunt Carol. Heard from your building security. Are you okay? I typed back, I'm better than I've been in 30 years. Because it was true. The confrontation I'd been dreading had come and gone, and I was still standing. Not just standing, thriving. They'd tried to break me one more time, and instead, they'd broken themselves against the boundaries I'd finally learned to set. The restraining order would be filed. The no trespass order was active. The paper trail was documented. I'd done everything right, everything by the book. But more than that, I'd proven to myself what I'd always suspected but never quite believed. I was strong enough to walk away, strong enough to choose myself over their dysfunction, strong enough to build a life they couldn't touch. They'd spent 30 years telling me I wasn't enough.
But standing there in my loft, watching the afternoon light stream through my windows, I finally understood the truth. I'd always been enough. They just never wanted me to realize it. And now that I had, there was nothing they could do to take it back.
The restraining order was granted 72 hours later. Patricia called with the news on Wednesday afternoon while I was in a client meeting. "Judge took one look at your documentation and approved it immediately," she said. "Your parents have been officially served. They're prohibited from contacting you directly, indirectly, through third parties, or coming within 500 feet of your home or workplace for 1 year. What happens if they violate it? Immediate arrest and potential jail time. Most people don't test restraining orders once they understand the consequences, but keep documenting everything just in case." I thanked her and hung up, expecting to feel relief. Instead, I felt oddly hollow. This was really it, the legal severing of ties with the people who'd raised me. Part of me had still been waiting for them to apologize, to show even a shred of self-awareness, but that moment was never coming. The family grapevine, however, was working overtime. By Friday, I'd received messages from relatives I'd forgotten existed. My second cousin, Rachel, who I'd last seen at a wedding in 2015, sent a long text. "Just heard about everything from Aunt Carol. I'm so sorry you went through that. My mom did something similar to me, always expecting me to fix her problems. It took me years to break free. If you need someone to talk to who gets it, I'm here." My uncle's new wife, Stephanie, who'd only married into the family 2 years ago, sent a message that made me laugh. "I always thought your parents were intense. Now I know they're just plain toxic. Good for you for getting out. Thanksgiving is going to be AWK this year, and I'm here for it." Even distant relatives were choosing sides. Some sent supportive messages, others went radio silent, which told me everything I needed to know about where they stood. But the most unexpected message came from someone I'd written off years ago, my maternal grandmother, Eleanor. She called on Saturday morning, her voice frail but steady. "Vanessa, dear, I need you to come visit me. Today, if possible. There's something I need to tell you before I lose my nerve." I hesitated. Grandma Eleanor had always been my mother's biggest defender, making excuses for every cruel word and dismissive gesture. "Grandma, I don't think—" "Please," she interrupted. "I'm 87 years old. I don't have time for cowardice anymore. Come to tea at 2. I'll explain everything." Something in her tone made me agree. Her house was the same as I remembered. Victorian wallpaper, china teacups displayed in glass cabinets, the smell of lavender and old books. She answered the door herself, steadier on her feet than I expected, and ushered me into the sitting room where tea was already laid out. "You look good," she said, studying me with sharp eyes. "Better than I've seen you in years, actually." "Thank you." She poured the tea with practiced precision, added 1 sugar to hers, none to mine, she remembered. Then she set down the pot and looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Shame. "I owe you an apology," she said bluntly. "A big one. For years of enabling your mother's behavior and pretending I didn't see what she was doing to you." I set down my teacup, not trusting my hands to stay steady. "What?" "Your mother," Grandma Eleanor continued, "has always been difficult. Competitive, critical, obsessed with appearances. I know this because I raised her that way." She paused, her eyes glistening. "I was a terrible mother, Vanessa. I was cold and demanding, always comparing her to other children, never satisfied with anything she did. I created the monster she became, and then I watched her do the exact same thing to you, and I said nothing." The room felt smaller, the air thicker. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because she called me after the incident at your building, sobbing, hysterical, claiming you were cruel and ungrateful. And for the first time in my life, I told her the truth. I said, 'Margaret, you drove that girl away with your constant criticism and impossible expectations, just like I almost drove you away. The difference is, Vanessa is smart enough not to spend her whole life seeking approval from someone who will never give it.'" What did she say? Grandma Eleanor's laugh was bitter. She hung up on me.
Haven't heard from her since. But I realized something in that moment. I spent decades teaching my daughter that love is conditional, that affection must be earned through perfect performance. She internalized that lesson and passed it on to you. The cycle had to break somewhere. I'm glad it broke with you. Tears stung my eyes. I thought you'd hate me for cutting them off. Hate you? Darling, I'm proud of you. You did what I was too weak to do 50 years ago. You chose yourself. She reached across and squeezed my hand. I know I can't undo the damage I indirectly caused, but I want you to know that you were never the problem. You were always enough, exactly as you were. Your mother's inability to see that is her failure, not yours. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of generations of dysfunction hanging between us. There's something else, Grandma Eleanor said, pulling an envelope from her pocket. Your grandfather, before he passed, he set up a trust fund for you. Not much, maybe $20,000. He never told your mother because he knew she'd find a way to claim it. He wanted you to have something that was just yours.
I stared at the envelope. Why didn't anyone tell me? Because it was set to be released on your 30th birthday, and your mother didn't know it existed. He was a quiet man, your grandfather, but he saw everything. He saw how they treated you. This was his way of making sure you'd have a safety net. She pushed the envelope toward me. The bank has been trying to reach you, but your mother changed your contact information in his papers to her own. I found out last month when I was going through his documents. I opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a letter in my grandfather's handwriting. Dear Vanessa, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you're hopefully free. I watched your mother treat you the way my wife treated her, and I'm ashamed I didn't do more to stop it. This money isn't much, but it's yours. Use it to build a life that makes you happy, not one that makes them comfortable. You deserve better than they gave you. Love always, Grandpa William. The tears came then, hot and unstoppable. My grandfather had seen me, really seen me. And even from beyond the grave, he was still trying to protect me. Grandma Eleanor handed me a tissue. He would have loved to see the woman you've become. Strong, independent, unwilling to settle for scraps of affection. I miss him, I whispered. So do I. But his gift to you wasn't just the money, it was the example. He stayed with me despite my flaws, but he never let him break his spirit. He kept his kindness even when I didn't deserve it. I think he hoped you'd inherit that resilience. And you did. We finished our tea, and I promised to visit more often. As I was leaving, Grandma Eleanor hugged me, really hugged me. Not the stiff, perfunctory embraces I remembered from childhood. One more thing, she said as I reached the door. Your mother will probably try to come back into your life eventually. When she does, remember this. You don't owe her forgiveness. Forgiveness is something you give yourself to stop carrying the weight of anger. But reconciliation, that requires change on her part. Don't confuse the two. I drove home through the late afternoon traffic, my mind buzzing with revelations. The trust fund for my grandfather felt like validation, proof that at least one person in my family had believed in me without conditions. But more than the money, it was the letter. The acknowledgement that I hadn't imagined the cruelty, that someone had witnessed it and recognized it for what it was. That evening, I sat on my rooftop terrace watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. My phone buzzed with a message from Tyler. Mom tried to call me 15 times today. I didn't answer. Just wanted you to know I'm still on your side. Then Brittany. Grandma Eleanor called me. She told me everything. I'm sorry I didn't understand sooner. Even Aunt Carol checked in. Heard you had tea with Mom. She called me crying, happy tears, said she finally told the truth. I'm glad someone in this family is capable of growth. The ripple effect of my decision to walk away was spreading further than I had anticipated. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about breaking a pattern, exposing a dysfunction that had festered for generations, and giving others permission to do the same.
My phone buzzed one more time. An email notification from the bank about Grandpa Williams' trust fund ready to be transferred to my account. $20,000 he'd hidden away, a secret legacy meant just for me. I thought about what he'd written. Use it to build a life that makes you happy, not one that makes them comfortable. I'd already started building that life. The loft, the career, the boundaries. But this felt like a blessing from someone who'd understood me in ways my own parents never had. The sun dipped below the horizon, and the city lights began twinkling like stars. Somewhere out there, my parents were probably still trying to figure out how to manipulate their way back into control. But up here, in my sanctuary, surrounded by proof that I wasn't alone, that some people had loved me unconditionally, I felt something I'd never quite experienced before. Peace. Not happiness, not yet, but peace. The kind that comes from knowing you've made the right choice, even when it's the hardest one.
6 months after that Sunday dinner that changed everything, I stood in my loft on Thanksgiving morning, preparing a meal for people who'd actually earned a seat at my table. The guest list was small but meaningful. Aunt Carol and her wife, Grandma Eleanor, Tyler and his new therapist recommended boundaries, Brittany and her boyfriend, my colleague Jamila, who'd become a close friend, and Beth from pottery class. 9 people total. But unlike the tense, performative dinners of my past, this one would be built on authenticity. My phone buzzed with a message from Patricia. Happy Thanksgiving! Just wanted you to know your parents' lawyer sent another letter. I sent back my standard cease contact response. They're running out of options and money for legal fees. I think they're finally realizing they can't bully their way through this. I smiled and set the phone down. 6 months of silence from them, broken only by occasional attempts through lawyers that went nowhere. The restraining order had done its job, not just legally, but psychologically. It had drawn a line they couldn't cross, and for once in my life, I wasn't the one bending. The doorbell rang at noon. Grandma Eleanor arrived first, carrying a pie and moving with surprising energy for her age. "The building let me right up," she said, kissing my cheek. "I told the doorman I was your grandmother, and he actually smiled. Said you'd mention me. That felt good." "You're always welcome here," I said, meaning it. Tyler arrived next, looking healthier than I'd seen him in years. He'd gotten a job, a real one, not another doomed startup, working in project management for a tech company. Nothing glamorous, he'd told me last week, but it's stable, and I'm good at it. Turns out when you actually work, instead of waiting for success to fall in your lap, things happen. Brittany came with her boyfriend Jake, who worked as a teacher and clearly adored her. She'd quit trying to be an influencer and started working at a marketing agency. "Turns out I'm actually good at social media when I'm selling products instead of selling myself," she'd joked. The desperation was gone from her eyes, replaced by something that looked like contentment. As everyone settled in, Aunt Carol raised her glass. "I'd like to propose a toast to Vanessa, who showed this family what real strength looks like. You didn't just walk away, you blazed a trail that made it possible for others to follow. Thank you for that." Glasses clinked around the table. Tyler nodded, his eyes misty. Brittany reached over and squeezed my hand. "I have something to add," Grandma Eleanor said, setting down her glass. "I've been thinking a lot about family lately, what it means, what it should mean, and I've realized that family isn't just about blood, it's about who shows up for you, who sees you for who you are and loves you anyway." She looked around the table. "This right here, this is family, the real kind." The meal was nothing like the rigid, tense dinners of my childhood. People laughed. They talked over each other. Tyler told embarrassing stories about his new job. Brittany showed us photos from a hiking trip she had taken. Jamila talked about her plans to start her own consulting business. Beth brought sketches of pottery designs she wanted to try. There was no performance, no walking on eggshells, no wondering who would be the target of criticism today. Just people enjoying each other's company without conditions or agendas. After dinner, as we were clearing plates, Tyler pulled me aside. "He saw them last week," he said quietly. "Mom and Dad, they were at the grocery store." My stomach tightened. "And Mom looked right through me, literally pretended she didn't see me. Dad saw me, started to say something, then just walked away. He swallowed hard. I used to think them ignoring me would hurt, but it was actually a relief, like confirmation that cutting them off was the right choice. How are they doing? Tyler laughed, sharp and bitter. Mom still tells people she has 3 ungrateful children who abandoned her in her time of need. She's working on a version of the story where she's the martyr. Some people never learn. Then I'm glad we're not waiting around for them to figure it out. Later that evening, after everyone had left, I stood on my rooftop terrace watching the city lights. My phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I opened it.
It was from my mother's new phone number. Just 3 words. We forgive you. I stared at those words for a long moment, then I laughed. Actually laughed out loud. After everything, the harassment, the legal threats, the public scenes, the refusal to take any responsibility, they were offering forgiveness, as if I were the one who'd done something wrong. I typed back a response, then deleted it. Then typed another one and deleted that too. Finally, I settled on the only reply that mattered. I blocked the number. They could forgive me all they wanted. I didn't need their forgiveness because I hadn't wronged them. I'd simply stopped letting them wrong me. There was a difference. I pulled up my messages and sent a text to the group chat I'd created after Thanksgiving dinner. The Real Family, Brittany had named it. Thank you all for today. For the first time in my life, I feel like I belong somewhere. Not because of obligation, but because of choice. The responses came quickly. Tyler, same here. Love you, sis. Brittany, best Thanksgiving ever. Let's do Christmas at my place. Aunt Carol, you're stuck with us now, no returns. Grandma Eleanor, my dear girl, you've always belonged. You just finally found people worthy of you. I saved those messages, a digital scrapbook of the family I'd chosen, the one that chose me back. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of autumn leaves and distant fireplace smoke. Somewhere in this city, my parents were probably sitting in their small apartment, nursing their grievances and polishing their victim story. They'd tell anyone who'd listen about their terrible daughter who'd abandoned them. But I knew the truth. I hadn't abandoned them. I'd escaped them. There was a profound difference. And standing there, under the stars, surrounded by proof that I was worthy of real love, real respect, real family, I finally understood something fundamental. The best revenge wasn't making them suffer. It wasn't public humiliation or legal battles or cutting words. The best revenge was this: living well. Building a life so full of genuine connection and joy that their absence didn't leave a hole. It left space. Space for people who actually deserved to be there. I thought about that Sunday dinner 6 months ago when my mother had smugly announced they were moving in, certain I'd comply like I always had. She'd expected the same old Vanessa, the doormat, the servant, the daughter so desperate for approval, she'd set herself on fire to keep them warm. Instead, she'd met the real Vanessa, the one who'd been there all along, just waiting to exist. I didn't need their permission anymore. I didn't need their approval, their validation, or their version of love that came with so many conditions it barely qualified as love at all. I had something better now. I had peace. I had boundaries. I had a chosen family that celebrated me instead of tolerating me. My phone buzzed one last time. Patricia. By the way, the restraining order expires in 6 months. Do you want to renew it, or do you think they've gotten the message? I thought about it for exactly 5 seconds before responding, renew it. Some lessons take longer to sink in. Because that was the thing about people like my parents. They don't change. They just find new ways to justify the same old patterns. And I wasn't interested in being their test subject to see if this time would be different. This time, next time, anytime. I was done. I went back inside, poured myself a glass of wine from the good bottle I'd been saving, and settled onto my couch. Tomorrow, I'd go back to work. Next week, I had pottery class. Next month, Christmas with my chosen family. A life unfolding exactly as I wanted it to, free from the weight of expectations I'd never asked for and could never meet. My name is Vanessa Hartley. I'm 29 years old, and this is how my story ends. Not with a bang or a dramatic confrontation, but with the quiet, powerful act of choosing myself. Every single day. They wanted me to be useful. I became useful to myself. They wanted me to serve. I learned to serve my own happiness. They wanted me to sacrifice. I sacrificed their hold on me. And in the end, the house they thought they'd claim, the life they thought they'd control, the daughter they thought they owned, none of it was ever theirs to take. It was always mine. And now, finally, I was home.
Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.